Okay, so we have our canvas with our trace design. We have a few brushes. I like these bristle brushes when I'm painting on canvas landscapes and things. Because of the stiffness of this bristle, it digs right into the little nooks and crannies of the canvas a lot easier than a soft brush would, a synthetic. But if that's what you have, please use them. It's not really a problem. I just prefer the bristle brushes. These are a filbert. That is where the tip is rounded as opposed to the square flat. They're a bright, they're a long-handled brush, and I find them in the oil painting and acrylic painting fine art sections of the art stores. And I've just got a little synthetic detail brush here as well. I'm going to use this little flat for the rocks and some of the shading. Simple palette. I've got a phthalo blue or ultramarine blue, whatever primary blue that you have. I have a phthalo green. It's a darker blue green, which I like, but whatever green you have, certainly use. Some primary yellow, black and white, and a primary red. Pretty simple. I think I do need some brown, so I'm going to add that. So don't forget your brown. That will help with the rocks, and then I tone the red down a little bit sometimes with that brown. So whatever brand, whatever colors you have in acrylic would work fine. So just pull those out. So here's my little trick on some of my paintings. I don't do this on all of them, but this one, it worked nicely. And I am going to just trace over my pattern with a Sharpie, except the horizon line. And I'm going to do that first because when I paint my water and some of the bigger areas, the Sharpie's going to show through and it will just give me a little guide. So I am just simply, and this is just the fine point, not the teeny tiny fine point, but just the regular Sharpies, which you probably have around. And just really just follow the little pattern. And this technique you might find fun to use for different things you might want to paint. And like I said, everything except the horizon line. We don't want a harsh line breaking our painting up there. So we're just going to draw everything else in. I just sort of did a quick sketch with pencil, but I will give you guys the tracer in a number of sizes. You could do this on a big 16 by 20. This is just a little, this might be an 8 by 10, 12 by 16 on the other size. You just decide what size you would like to do. And it's a great way just to learn this technique. So any pattern you might have for any other paintings you've done, you might want to try this technique with it. I know people have been requesting this, so I thought, what a fun painting to share today. I appreciate you guys popping on and watching. If you have any questions at all, please put them in the comments. Send me a message if you want to. I'll give you my cell phone number after, and you can always text me to that if you would like to be on my list so that you are notified when I go live. And not to worry, because if you don't catch me live, I always leave these recordings up so you can watch them another time. It's not something you have to catch live. But if you'd like to be notified, pop in and see what I'm up to. That would be great. Having a lot of fun this summer painting ocean scenes and beach scenes, lighthouses and mermaids and all kinds of fun things you'll find on the page here. Try to break it all down into simple steps for you. So if you're not a painter and you want to be, I could show you easily. Just take it one step at a time. Relax and have fun. The joy is in the process with these things. Just enjoy it. Don't judge yourself too harshly. Okay, little few trees. I even sketched those in. Just some pine trees here. I'm varying this from this picture a little bit because like I said, I'm just sort of sketching that on because I have a smaller canvas here. I think that's everything. I had a little island or two back here you can put in. I'm not going to put one behind there. I'll be too busy with the house. So that's good enough to start. So what's nice about it is we will see our lines even when we paint over some of this. I'm going to start with my sky. Most landscapes I start background and move forward. Okay, So my sky, I'm going to just mix my white and blue here, just a little blue. I don't worry about my skies too much. I just add a little blue. And a lot of times what I do is I paint the edge of the canvas. I like these gallery wrapped canvases because I don't have to frame the pieces if I don't want to. And if I start my sky on the edge, I get an idea of what the tone looks like, and I can adjust from there. I can go darker or lighter. This background sky, I didn't do a lot of light and dark. I just did it pretty much one tone. Again, it's your painting, and I am not the boss of you, so you do whatever you would like. Can you see I'm using kind of crisscrossy brush strokes? I just don't want to go back and forth and have it look like I was painting a wall. I don't want those streaks. When I do water, I go back and forth, but sky, I use a mixed up stroke like this just to make it look a little more natural. And besides, it's fun to slap the paint on like this. And like I said, if you want, you can throw in some darks and lights. We're going to put this shade, and I'm going to put some clouds on top afterwards. Here's where you don't have to really worry about going over things. And you do want a little blue sky behind that lighthouse anyway. So we're going to just get a rough line across there for the horizon. And I'm working quickly because I like to work a little wet and wet sometimes. When I want to start these clouds, I want them started really subtly, soft, not harsh, not looking like they were pasted on. So what I do is I get my whole sky in. And that's not a bad sky just as it is. But if you want to add some clouds, I just dry off your brush. Take just your white. And just kind of map in where you want them. Can you see how light that is? You hardly see them. That's what I want. I just want it to be that light and that subtle to start. And that way when we add it more paint and make it brighter as we go, it's a slow buildup and it doesn't look like we took clouds and pasted them on. So just map them out. This is where you want them. My trick to clouds is a little bump, a few bump bits on the top and straight out on the side. I don't do big ovals or log shaped things. I want them a little puffy in the middle and out to the side. I know it's sort of formula-like, but it works and it looks natural. And I like that straightness of the clouds. I know when you look at them, they're all wonky in different ways. But sometimes if you do a big wonky cloud that's shaped, diagonally, like you may see in the sky, it just looks odd sometimes. So do what you wish, of course, but play around with your clouds. Where this paint is wet right now, if I didn't like the placement of these, I could just brush them right out. So don't be afraid to fix things, change things up. It's acrylic paint, guys. You can paint right over something if you don't like it. So you're not tied into it, and I don't want you to be looking at your painting super duper close and say, oh my God, I don't like that. No one's looking at it that close. It's gonna be far away, step back, take a break sometimes. And if you don't think you'll like it, leave it sit, look at it in a day or two, and you would be amazed at how much better it looks. Okay, so let's put our water in. I'm going to do blue, just the dark blue for the water to start. And again, you could start on your edge if you want to finish that off. And I'm going to get a line of that blue right across my horizon. And I'm doing it rather quickly because I want the horizon, the edge of the water, just to blend slightly with the background. So I've got a wet sky still. I've got wet blue line there. Drawing off my brush because I want to blend it just with the dry brush, just softly. I don't want it a big blend. I just want to have a little soft blend there. It's barely anything, but we just did not want that harsh line, and that's why we didn't outline it with that Sharpie. Okay, so now the rest of the water. I'm going back and forth this time because it is water and I want it to be a bit streaky. As I go, I'm going to add a little white to this paint and streak it across as well. That'll give the appearance of like white caps and waves and just a little distinction back there. And I just remembered another color we're going to use. We're going to use a yellow ochre to base that lighthouse. You can certainly be a little neater and go around. I'm just going right over because I know I can see the edge there. And whenever I do something white, I always have a darker color behind it. So that blue would be fine, and then we're going to actually put a little yellow ochre in first. So I will grab some of that paint in a moment. But let's get this in because I want to add some of the white to it when it's still wet. So I do tend to paint a little quickly, and sometimes that's better off because you're not analyzing every stroke you make and fussing and thinking it doesn't look right, because painting isn't beautiful till it's done, because in the meantime you're just adding and taking away and shading and highlighting. So do not think this is the finished product, and at the end we can always touch up things. If you finish a painting and you're not happy with it, send me a message with a picture and I'll be happy to critique it with you and give you some pointers if you are stuck somewhere. Okay, so there we are with our quickly added blue ocean, and now I'm just going to take a little white. I'm going to take it just on the corner of that brush. Let me pull my palette over so you can see. Just on the corner, just a little bit. I'm going to pat some off. I don't want a big streak of white in the background especially. Just a little white streaked in here and there. Because the water's still wet, I'm taking a little more, but I'm always patting it off. It's blending almost as I go. It's almost a no-brainer. I'm not even hardly working here. As I get closer, you'll see more of a little white cap. Take a little more, especially near these rocks. There's going to be a little lighter areas. I'm starting it in there now just lightly, like the clouds, and we're going to go back later and build up some highlights. But for now, just make some interesting little streaks here, just so your eye has something interesting to look at, and it's not just looking at a big square of blue, dark blue. All right, so that's good for now. And our clouds are drying a little bit, so we will go back in a short time and work on the clouds. I am done with this blue. I think I'll quickly just do my edge so that's finished off, and I don't have to come back to it later. And I have the paint out, so let's just do that real quick. There. I don't have to do too much there, but cover the edge. So there we are. I'm going to rinse off the blue. I'm done with that now. So I'm just going to rinse off that brush. I'm going to pull out some of the yellow ochre that I do like as a base coat underneath what we have there for white sails in the Lighthouse. So that's just a golden ochre, a yellow, a goldy color. It's a color I use a lot too. I do like this color. We could certainly have made this easy enough with our yellow and brown, but I happen to have it, so let's just do that. Okay. Now, we do have to wait for some of the bits to dry, but mostly now what we're going to do is color in the pieces as you see them. After they're base coated with just a plain color, whether it's the green or the dark green or the rocks, then we add highlights and lowlights and shadows. So let's just start. I'm going to start with this brown black because it's dark and it will cover what I have that's wet there. And if you look close in my rocks, I do add some blue anyway, so that will all work nicely for us. And again, you can use whatever brush you would like. This painting is a little smaller, so I'm going to just get a dark black brown. I'm mixing the black and brown on my palette. And really, you're just painting by number now. Even though we're just filling it in with a solid color, does not mean you have to have it a perfectly mixed color. You can see on my palette I've got some more brown areas. I can sometimes go more into the black. I can sometimes go into a little blue even. So you can still, even though you're base coating it, and I jokingly say paint by number, it doesn't have to be a solid. You want it to have a little variation, some different shades. That makes the painting a little interesting sometimes, is taking an area that you might look at and think, oh, it's just all brown, the trunk of a tree or whatnot. And you just add some color in there. It just makes it more interesting and more of a pattern. You have to think design sometimes too, and not just what you see. If you wanted it to be exactly like you see it, well, then you could have just taken a photograph. And we have loads of photographs. We don't need to have just to kill ourselves trying to make a painting look like a photograph. I'm going to paint in some of the green. And I want it a little lighter, so I'm just mixing my dark green in with some yellow, and I'm going to get a middle shade just to fill this in for now. We'll worry about getting some darks and lights after. I did forget my little Sharpie line along here, but it's not a big deal because we are going to cover those lines again when we're done. What do you think of the Sharpie method? Have you ever done anything like this before? This is kind of a fun way to do things. I did a painting I'll show it to you after my son, that I did this technique, and that's where I sort of got the idea. When we're waiting for something to dry in a sec, I'll pull that painting off the wall and show you. And it is, like I said, you're just, what are you doing here? Painting by number. Has anybody seen the little tiny canvases I've been painting? Those little teeny miniature ones, they're so fun. I've got one over there again. I'll do show and tell when we're in the middle of waiting for things to dry. You could do the same design on there, a little more simpler, maybe one sailboat and a little, just the lighthouse part, but would really be cute on those tiny canvases. Those paint up so quickly. Okay, so I have green on my brush, so I may as well just wipe it off and just get that dark green that I want for these sprucey trees. I'm mixing some green and some blue. Paint those in, and then anything white I'm going to paint in that yellow ochre color. Oh, and I didn't do my rocks down here in my dark, so I'll go back and do those. Okay. Let me go and do my rocks down here. Could this be any easier? Okay. And my green in the island in the back, because I forgot the couple of little islands back there. One here. And there is one sort of obscured by the water, but it is back there. We could make the black top of the lighthouse with our Sharpie, but I am going to just paint it in. Just a little cap here. I do paint upside down a lot, sideways, whatever makes it so I can reach the little areas the best. Okay. Now let's get that yellow ochre in where we need it. So that would be the sails. And the lighthouse and the house. I left a lot of this showing through when I highlighted with the white too. I kind of like the way that looked. Don't worry about your little windows. You can paint right over those guys because we'll paint them afterwards. What's everybody's favorite thing to paint? I like different things at different times, sometimes seasonally, of course. I'm kind of looking forward to some fall paintings and some Christmas ones, which I'm going to start on shortly. I think I've finished up with my mermaids and my summers and my beaches. We might do a few more, but I'm dying to get some new pumpkins. And I'm not wishing fall upon us because summer's too short here in New England as it is, but I do like the idea of designing some new paintings for the fall and for Christmas. Some winter paintings, some snowmen. There. Alrighty, the sail here. And you see how you don't have to be too careful with the edges because we're going to outline them again. So I'm working a little fast and not being so precise as I might be if I didn't have that outline. Looks like I used a little teal for this flag, but again, you guys can mix up any colors that you like. I have a little white, and I'll show you what I do. I take a little white on my brush, take most of it off. I want the top of this lighthouse here to sort of look like glass and see-through, so putting it on really thin, I might even add a little water to that just to make it see-through. There we are, just a little so you can see that sky through. Okay, now I am going to mix a little of my red with my brown. It's almost not going to be quite burnt sienna, but I want to get that color for the boat not to be too pinky. And again, we're going to go over and highlight things. I think I might highlight that with a little orange. So let me just get that dark in first. It's like a brick red, I guess. And the roof, same thing. And it looks like that will be pretty much everything. We have our doors and things, but we've got most things base coated, which is cool. Then we'll hop on up to the sky and get those clouds in. And feel free to ask any questions in the comments as we go along. Anything you want to share, I'd love to hear. You can let me know where you're watching from. That's always fun too. And I will put a link in my for signing up for my email list. And if you want me to text you when I go live, I will add you to that list as well. And I noticed I have a little piece here I forgot. I'll just cover that up. There's always little touch-ups that you need to make as you go. You can see a few places over here. I didn't quite bring the blue down far enough. Not a big deal. Easy enough to fix. There, okay. And now I'm going to jump up and just add a little bit to our clouds. So I'll go back to that same bristle brush, which I like. I'm taking just white on the very corner of my brush, and I don't want all that white, so I'm patting most of it off. So I have white on the top corner of my brush, and I use that white towards the top of my clouds. So I very lightly just go over a little bit of what I have there. See the little roundy shapes? I'm making like little round shapes. And then I'm twisting my brush because I'm always keeping that white to the top. And I'm just making a few more little ones, and see how I straighten out? Same thing, a little roundy bits, straight out. And I can build up as bright or heavy as I like here, but I start light. You're better off starting very light and looking at it and deciding if you want more. It's easier to do it that way than put too much on and take it off. And you can do the same thing. You can add a little bit in front maybe. See if you skip down a little bit and do some in front. Leave a little bit of the blue showing. It sort of makes this little guy in the front here. I always round out though and out. And then if you want a nice, I'm still taking the white on the tip, still wiping it off. But if you want to get heavier in just a few places, you can do that. But see how I'm building it up little by little. And that's enough really. I put a little bit down here where the boats are, you know, a little bit. I think I might be better off with a finer brush, but let's just see. So in front of the boats, you've got a little bit, and in front of these rocks, the water's sort of breaking there. And I'm sort of doing the same thing here. I'm making like little bumpy bits, and then I'm always bringing it straight out. Anywhere that you might want, you know, a little action in the water here, you could just drag some bits across these guys. And I might even finish off with my fine brush later, or now. And you can always even put a little bit of a brighter little wake for the water, or, you know, if you want something a little heavier and have more control. You can even take some real thin lines and do, you know, if you want something like this anywhere. It's all up to you what you like to do. And I'm going to grab, I don't know why, but I do love teal lately, and I like that little flag to be teal that's here. Just this little, this is the only one that has a flag that you can see. Just put that in with a light teal color. Again, it could be any color you like. All right, so I think I need another coat of this ochre color because I can really see the line there of my blue. What I'm going to do to get rid of that is take my ochre color and add some white to it. And that way it's going to be opaque, and I'm going to be able to put another coat when that dries, maybe of some gold. But I want to get rid of that line we had. And these guys are a little dark, so let's just lighten them up a teensy bit. And now let's brighten up our bottoms. I'm going to mix some of my red with yellow and get an orange for that. Just a little primary yellow, a little primary red. We'll get our orange. It's just not going to show up much, but I'm going to put a little on there. And then again, white always makes it a little more opaque and a little more coverage is a little better, so I've taken that same color, just a little bit of yellow and red mixed, get my orange and just add a little white to it. And now I can kind of highlight these guys a little bit. I'm going right into the wet paint and just getting it a little lighter. Do the same thing for the roof. I'm going to take my orange that I mixed, a little yellow and a little red, just to get more of an orangey color. Well, I didn't mean to drag green in there, but so be it. And just another coat, just to tone the pink down of that. I know it's not that noticeable, but it is giving it a little different tone. Now we will add a little white to that. Get a little lighter shade of orange. Oh, I keep picking up the green. I didn't lay my colors on my palette out far enough. All right. It's getting a little lighter. A little bit here. I'm going to let that dry before I put my next coat. I'm going to go now back to my greens. Get it a little darker this time. I'm just going to add that on here and there. I want to add a little bit of light yellowy green on top, so I want it to be a little darker here. I'm going to just take a little of my yellow if I can get it without the green. Some white. So this is just a little bit of that yellow with some white, and I'm just dry brushing it over here. I know it's wet underneath, but that's okay. I will dry brush some on after too, but for now I just want to get a little bit in there. There, just coming around. These guys in the back need to be lightened up a little bit too. They're going to be a little lighter at the top than they are at the bottom. Good. The middle of the lighthouse light needs a little yellow. So I'm taking a little yellow and white again, that same color. And I'm just going to lightly brush it down the middle so it looks a little like there's a light glowing in there. And that finishes that off nicely. I'm going to shade, when I shade the top of this little cap, I just use a little light blue. I like to use a light blue rather than a gray sometimes. Tiny bit on my brush, wipe it off. I don't want much. It's just a little comma here and a little highlight there. That's all that needs. These trees are going to get a little darker for the one behind. So that dark green that we used, I'm going to tie a little bit of black in there. And I'm going to get that dark one behind. And then I'm going to get a little bit of dark on the right side of those trees as well. Okay, good. Now we're still letting that lighthouse dry a little bit. I might just dry brush a little bit of that gold on top there. Okay, that's good. That'll be nice when that dries. Let's play around with our rocks. How I make my rocks is I almost use a square brush. I'm going to use this littler one that's almost the shape of the rocks. And I just dry brush on some lights and darks. So I'm going to go and get a lighter brown to start with, just a little bit lighter. And can you see I'm going to just like, with the brush flat, just make some rough idea of rocks. I'm not really forming each one, but I'm crisscrossing just with a little flat. And can you see it's almost starting to look rock-like? I want a few different shades. Let's go with a little bit of a light blue here and there. Work quick, because if you think about it too much, you're going to try to get it too precise, and it's really a folk arty kind of painting. It's not going to be too perfect. I want a few darks in there, so I'm taking just the black. I'm always taking my color and taking a little off. I'd rather start with it light and not have a big glob of it. I can always go in and darken it. it feels like it's too black and you've lost your brown, you can go back. You can do a little bit of the red brown. You can add any colors. If you're doing a big wall and it's a bigger painting than this is a good technique, but you can just add different shades in. Can you see how that kind of adds a little something to it? Okay. All right, I think we can work on our sails. I really just painted some white over that yellow, but not covering it perfectly. So I've got just the plain white on my brush, and I'm just kind of going over it. And I'm going to dry some off because I want to sort of dry brush this on. I don't want it to cover perfectly. I may go back and add a little bit of white highlight, but I'm going to try just filling it in like this for now. So can you see how I left a little of the gold on the edges? I'm doing it quickly so it looks like it was done quickly, not fussed with and perfect. And again, don't worry about your rough edges because you're going to cover those with your Sharpie afterwards. So there's that. And we've got this little guy back here. He's just a little one. And the house. Let's see if we can do the house now. I've left a little more of the gold showing around the edges, so it looks like there's a little shadow cast. So can you see here? It's a little more gold showing around the edges so that it's almost naturally casting a shadow. So start sort of in the middle. Leave it a little bit gold on the edges. And again, when I add more paint, I take some off. And we'll go over to the lighthouse part. It's a little wet, but we can do this little guy. You don't have to worry about the windows because, again, we're going to go right over them. And I'm going to see if I can do this a little bit. I know it's going to mix in, but let's just get a little on there. And when this dries, I'm going to highlight it a tiny bit. I think my little flag needs a little highlight here. And our boat, our orange, needs a little highlight. Now that it's dry, we can almost just dry brush that on a little bit, just to give them a little bit of brightness. My rocks need the same thing, only in some white. Take the white, pat most of it off, and just some of the rocks that would be closest to us, we're going to get a highlight. And even these little guys, tops would be highlighted. And sometimes the paint dries and it just sinks in a little bit, so don't feel like you can't go back and add more. It's better than having too much in the beginning. A little bit light on those back island tops, so I'm going to get really more of a yellow. White for opaqueness. And just across the tops, let's really brighten those up. And on the foreground here, we can take a little bit. It's just that light yellow with a little white. And the trees, I used the white with that sprucey color to keep it a little different color than the grasses. And it's the left side that I'm highlighting, and I'm just using that little jaggedy stroke that those trees would be. Even on that one, we give it a little highlight. And I'm going to try to get a little bit of a middle shade here. A little lighter than the other side, but there. That works for that. Let's paint our little windows in since we are right here. And you know what? You can use your little round brush, but I have a little flat that works great for windows because it's right about the right size. And I'm not making them perfectly square. I'm just sort of putting them in there. These little guys are teeny, so we'll do this. Again, because we're going to outline them with the Sharpie, you don't have to worry about them being perfect. So there's the windows base in, and the roofs we're going to add a little orange to, just like we did with the boats. Always make sure your brush has got all, once you've rinsed it, get all the water out before you take more color, because you don't want to go on, especially when I'm dry brushing and whatnot, you don't want any water in your paintbrush. All right, so we want that light orangey color just for little highlights here and there. There we are. Looking good. Gonna brighten up the house a little bit. I might go back with these rocks and put a little bit more heavier waves breaking against them, because again, the paint does sort of sink in a little bit sometimes. Wherever you might need a little brighter white, you can do that. Then we're going to dry this well before we put that Sharpie. The thing about the Sharpies, or any paint marker, if you're using them, make sure the paint that you're going over is really dry, because the minute you touch that Sharpie to paint that's wet, you've lost it. So just be careful with that. And I'm just going to make these as bright as I want. Then I'm going to hit it with the hairdryer. Dry that up so when we go with the Sharpie, it's not going to be too wet. I put some little lines in with my liner brush just to divide the windows up. They're very, I keep the paint thin down, and they're not very straight. They're wonky. So you just kind of go down the middle, you know, make a few little crisscrossy shapes. They're barely there, but it just breaks up the window from being just dark holes. You know, this is a door here, so we'll just maybe streak it a little bit. Just a little rough. And this little painting is smaller than the bigger sample, so we don't have as much detail on there. And that is it, I think. I know it looks messy because we don't have our outlining on yet, but let me give it a quick dry. And then we will go right into the Sharpie. All right, so we don't really need, we'll move our paints over. Because we're pretty much done with that. We might add a little something if we need it. But now I'm just going to take the Sharpie back again. And if you have some tiny areas, like on the tiny one, you can add the little ultra fine. But for now, what I do is I just now go back and I go over the lines. And it just kind of defines everything just a little nicer. It's fun. It's kind of sketchy. Now, if you notice, sometimes I'm not doing a perfectly solid line heavy. I'm using a very light touch. I'm starting and stopping sometimes, so it's not like a big heavy outline. Start, sometimes I skip and I go back up. So it's a little shakier looking and a little less heavy. So I am barely touching the Sharpie. You know, you don't want to really bear down. It would look just too outlined. So very light touch. You can sign your name at the same time with this. Don't necessarily have to do the bottom of those rocks where the water is breaking. Now I'm going to do these. I think I'll go in after and put a few little waves hitting this rock. And here I sort of outline a little bit. I almost make it look like I'm outlining a few rocks. You can almost follow the shapes of your paint if you want. Just a little bit of outlining in there. Get our little boat back here. This, put the line in I forgot there. And you see how it just delineates the design now, and it adds just a cool touch. I don't know. You might like it. And it just neatens up everything. you can hold it. I have to sometimes hold it different ways. Hold it any way that's comfortable for you to do that outlining. Sometimes it doesn't even look like it needs it, but I always go over all the lines. And here it's nice because you can get this little fancy thing across there. I still outline this even though it's painted black. Not the horizon again, but wherever you think you might want it. Oh, and then I kind of do the windows a little bit. On this tiny painting that I'm doing, it might be a good time to come and do it with the little ultra fine. I sometimes just go out beyond the window a little bit. I like that rough look. I'll show you a close-up of the bigger one too. I think I forgot this line here, I think. There. And see, it's wonky and I don't care. It's just a folk arty kind of little painting. The bigger one, you can see on the windows how I went out over them a little bit. I like that kind of look. I think I brought maybe even some little branches in maybe here. And I just wanted to add a little white caps breaking. It looks just too plain here. I'm just going to go back with a little bit of, so it looks like there's some, waves up against that. And that's about it. Oh, you know what? I missed one tiny little spot here, I think. I can see the white. And then you can just sign your name with the Sharpie if you like. And that is how easy peasy it is to do this kind of, Thanks for painting with me. Let me show you that one that inspired me to do this sort of technique. And it is, it was a painting I did, it might even be oil. No, it might be acrylic, I can't remember. It was a painting of my son, Nick, back in the day when he was doing his homework and none too happy about it, can you tell? So I did outline everything with the Sharpie, painted it and then outlined it again. And the Frida Mermaid I just finished is the same way, same exact technique. She looks a little complicated, but you just trace the whole design with the Sharpie, paint in between, and then go over it again. So pretty easy. So thank you guys for watching and painting with me. And like I said, I think you have any questions, put it in the comments. Get on my email list and you can follow me there. And if you get on my texting list, I will text you before I go live next time.